Thank you, Adara. That was beautiful. Thank all of you for all coming to celebrate the life of my father. And to honor him, I'd like to show you a little photobiography of his life. My father was born in Beijing, December 31st, 1927. And here he is with his parents. And his older sister, Eula, and that's him. Even at a young age, his parents knew he was destined to be a scholar. He was the eldest son of a family of 6 siblings. Here he is, Here he is with, again, his older sister, Eula, and his 4 younger siblings with his mother. Now, during his childhood, he moved around a lot, and that was because his father was an academic geologist, and he taught at several universities, including Jiaodong University in Tangshan and Chongqing University in Sichuan. But one of his moves was not really planned, because at the age of 3, he got gravely ill with a case of amoebiasis. And so he was sent by himself without his parents to his uncle's house in Tianjin. And my father said it was because they had the best that Western medicine could offer. But his younger sister, Lydia, told us that it was because his mother couldn't bear to think about her son perishing in front of her. So, and in fact, his grandfather even had already purchased a small coffin for him for what they thought was inevitable. But whether from Western medicine or the loving care of his uncle and aunt, he made a miraculous recovery. So he went back to Sichuan and went to elementary school and all the way through high school there. And then in 1945, after World War II, his parents and the 3 youngest siblings all went to Taiwan. But the 3 older siblings stayed in China, including my father, who continued his studies at National Central University in Nanjing. And then finally in 1949, during the Communist Revolution, my father finally joined the rest of the family in Taiwan. One little known fact was that actually he was a semester short in Nanjing University, and even though they allowed him to finish his last semester in Taiwan, he actually never had a bachelor's degree. All right, this brings me to the courtship of Tung-Po and Natalie. So Tung-Po's father was offered a position to head the Geelong coal mining company in Taiwan. So then he recruited a good friend to be his chief engineer. He worked with a excellent geologist in China, and who happened to be Emily's father. So he invited Emily's parents to come to Taiwan, and I guess as was customary, the co-workers became neighbors as well. And here they are together. So the Chen family seen here with my mother and the rest of the family. Moved in next to the Lin family in Taiwan. And here's again my mother with nephew and a young niece, and if you look closely you can see her mother in the first occurrence of photobombing. So another interesting thing was, like my father, my mother had a near fatal childhood disease, which was diphtheria. So the teenage daughters of the Lin and the Chen family, here Olivia and my mother Emily, here's my father's younger sister, a cousin, and a younger sister and younger brother too. They became quick friends and immediately hit it off. So my father at this time was still studying in China and would come to Taiwan to visit occasionally. So his little sister decided she was going to try to introduce her brother to Emily in hopes of maybe having her best friend become part of the Lin family. So she set up their first date. And can you guess what activity they did on their first date? Either volleyball, dance, or math homework, possibly? Actually, it was a lively game of volleyball. And as you can see by the score, it wasn't very competitive. But it wasn't really fair because my mother was a physical education major in college. But my father was captivated by his little sister's best friend, and after meeting on the volleyball court, decided to seriously court her. So he knew he had no chance at any kind of athletic endeavor against her. But his greatest skill was problem solving, right? So he researched every angle to try to win her over. Right? So the first thing he tried was to showcase his physique. Of course, that didn't work. He also showed that he could provide for a family. And even his outdoor survival skills. But none of that really impressed my mother. And it didn't impress her sisters either, or her very protective brothers. So he went back to his strength, which is academics, and he would sit in front of my mother's, Emily's father's office, reading his English journals aloud, so that he could hear how proficient he was. And he was also very impressed that he got into MIT for graduate school. And so, they highly were highly impressed with my mother's educated suitor. So, since my father was going to come to the U.S. shortly to attend graduate school, he quickly proposed to my mother, and she accepted. And of course, the traditional Chinese engagement party was on. And here's TP's mother having a toast with Emily's father. And both families were very happy at this union. All right, so my father, he moved to the United States to attend MIT in Boston in 1952. And he was hoping to experience some of that famous American college life. So he joined a frat, he did a little partying, he read some comic books, and was just kind of a wild and crazy guy. Well, word got back to his parents in China, or in Taiwan, so they immediately dispatched his sisters to come to the U.S. to supervise him. So they stuck to him like glue. And Everywhere he went, they went. Never let him out of their sight. And, he would have to escape on snowy days just to get a little alone time. Well, finally, my mother came from Taiwan to the U.S. by way of a 40-day ship ride, docking in Oakland. She was accepted into the University of Wisconsin to study dance. However, when she went to Boston to go visit my father, he had a surprise for her. And he had secretly made all the wedding plans for her before she even came to visit. And he even convinced her to transfer her studies over to Northeastern University in Boston. So 2 weeks later, they were married. And wasting no time, 9 months later, my eldest sister, Pat, was born. And as you'd expect from a mathematician, at constant 2-year periodic intervals, my sister Bessie arrived 2 years later. 2 years later, my third sister Jeannie came. And 2 years later, I arrived. So, growing up, my father really loved mathematics. That was his passion. But on the advice of his parents, he earned his PhD at MIT in the much more practical field of physical chemistry, thinking that easier to get a job, of course. So, after he finished his PhD, he got a job at one of the chemical industry giants in DuPont in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, although he was very well compensated as a chemical engineer, he didn't quite fulfill his calling to be an educator. So he decided to apply for professorships out in California at several of the new universities. My parents and their 3 young daughters, along with the in-laws, drove cross-country from Delaware to Los Angeles, California, where he ended up accepting a position at the San Fernando Valley State College, which then became California State University at Northridge. And he was even able to procure his professorship in mathematics, which was his first true academic love. And he stayed at CSUN for a very fulfilling 35-year career. And in addition to teaching, he helped found the San Fernando Valley Chinese Cultural Association, which my sisters and I and several of our nieces and nephews attended Chinese school every Saturday. He also was an active member of the Chinese American Engineers and Scientists Association of Southern California, where he served as president in 1973. He helped found the China Institute at CSUN, which was strengthening ties between the U.S. and China through academic and cultural exchanges. And of course, my parents worshiped here in this beautiful house of God that we're gathered in today. So as we look back on my father's 95-year life, we can see all the people he touched, including his parents, his brothers and sisters, his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, his extended family, his trusted and loyal friends, and most of all, his devoted and loving wife. Together, for 67 years. And we can truly look back at a long life, well lived. Thank you. One other thing I wanted to mention, as a small tribute, you'll see many of his family members wearing some of his favorite ties, including this one of Einstein and some mathematical equations. And another special tribute was made by my Ersusu, which is my Uncle Tonyo. It's a slideshow he had put together along with music and English and Chinese captions with some very old, rare photographs. So if you have time, please check it out. It's set up in the reception area on the video monitor. And lastly, I'd like to thank my sisters, Patricia, Betsy, and Jean, as well as our caregiver, Jocelyn, for their tender and loving care. Excuse me. For the tender and loving care that's allowing my parents to stay in their own home for their over years. Thank you.
Johnny, I thought I know everything about your daddy. I was surprised. Well, I'm Chen son. But even my last name is Chen, I'm part of the Lin family. And I can swear to God, Tung-Po is my brother. Real brother. The reason for that, I never could understand. Somehow, when I was born, I was assigned to my mother's side, which is Chen. But throughout my life, I was always call my father Gu Die, meaning uncle, and call my mother Gu Ma, meaning auntie. But when it comes to my siblings, I always call them the real stuff. 大姐、大哥、二哥、二姐、秋姐, and myself is known as 小弟. Xiao Li means little brother. And little brother always do things that's kind of different. Like I want to take this microphone in my hand because I cannot stand still. Okay, first, it's a shock to you. Today, I'm not going to talk to you because I only want to talk to my 大哥, big brother. You don't have to turn your heads back. You can just look at here because he is everywhere. Hi, 大哥，好久不见你了。啊？ Oh. How's everybody? That's a hard question to answer because there are so many people here. I haven't talked to them this morning, asked each one of them how they are doing. But I know for sure everyone miss you. Everyone loves you. And now, even with your poor eyesight, you can just turn looking at each one here and tell them how much you love each one of them in return. When I grow up, you always my admired person because you seem to know everything. You taught me everything I knew until when I was 8, because that's when I stepped outside of my family to be exposed to all different kind of people and world. But during these formative years, you were the one really told me everything. Well, let me think about some example. You probably don't remember all this. I wanted to be a Chinese opera singer. Why? Did you remember? You always sang, and I remember, for example, it's nice to have those gadgets that remind you of what you forgot. Okay, Yolanda, what was I looking for? She always reminds me as I forgot this, I forgot that. So, okay, anyway, here we are. Okay. I think at that time, when I was little, 大姐、大哥、二姐、二哥. 4 of my siblings, they all attend same middle school, 南开大学. So they always sing, for example, the song for their school. And it goes like this. 我孩子病百合之境，微微我朗开的身。Am I right? So, I didn't know what kind of song it was, but I saw it was a beautiful song, and I learned it. I said, I want to be a singer when I grow up. And when I grow up, come to U.S., everyone here sings, "Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree." So that was one of my dreams, to be a singer and to be Chinese opera. Let me think what I was thinking. Anyway, let's forget about that. OK， 大哥，那个我忘记了，我刚才要讲什么。那么现在 OK，I think it was 天文、物理、诗词歌赋 everything seems you know it. You remember I was collecting stamps, and from the stamps I got to learn which are the countries in this world and how their president or king look like. But there was one stamp I couldn't figure out what country it was, so I took it to him. I said, 大哥, which country did this stamp come from? He looked at it, he said, wait a minute. He took a mirror and put a mirror on top of the stamp. And he said, look at that. Now you recognize? I said, oh yeah, these are English, but it's mirror image of English. It's Russian. So I learned how Russian language look like. And I also remember somehow he learned Japanese. I didn't know he was destined to have his daughter-in-law from Japan, son-in-law from Japan later. But at that time, Japan was enemy of China. So I said, no, I don't think I want to learn anything about Japanese. He said, you never know. So he told me a few words, a few things about how to say Japanese. And later when I came to U.S. as a boat person. That means I rode on a boat, actually it's a steamboat, from Taiwan to U.S. And the boat stopped in Japan, and we went out and had fun in Japan. And when I look at the things, it's so different from what we used to know. So I used my Japanese. I point out the things I was curious about. I said, これは何ですか? Anyone understand that? It means, what is that? Then I get the merchant explain to me for 3 minutes. I couldn't understand one word. And now with Google Translate, it's much easier. So, now I remember. I wanted to sing a Chinese opera. It's always in my head. But it just suddenly kind of disappeared a few minutes ago. 张别谷，进庙门儿，我躬身向拜，尊一声城隍老爷、城隍奶奶，细听明白。Okay, it's a part of a famous story in China, old history called the Wu Pen Ji. I'm not going to explain that to you, but you'll understand, right? You remember that one? You always sing that, and I followed and learned how to say that. You also show me how to appreciate the music from all over the world. Somehow, in those early days, we did not really have any fancy instrument to play music, but you cranked up that record player, and then da 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 da, da 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 da. You told me that's Beethoven, the Fifth Symphony. So it's always in my head. Bum, 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 bum. And then there's always many others that I learned from you. So everything was just beautiful. You taught me, I absorbed it, and I wanted to be like you. Only one thing. Whenever you told me Mass, I hated it. I didn't want to do anything with Mass. Until later, when I went to graduate school, of course, there's so much thing I had to learn or use in Mass. And I still remember when I got my PhD, first thing I said to my wife, I said, I swear. What did I swear? I swear that I would rather starve than go into teaching, and I have done both, everything, all these years, because teaching actually fulfilled my childhood wish to act. Every lecture, I acted. And students appreciate that. Except one who fell asleep in my class. I woke him up. I said, "You cannot sleep in my class." He said, "Yes, Professor, I can if you don't speak so loud." And also, 大哥, you taught me, no matter what we do, we always need to keep a good sense of humor. And I think that really is the base for my career. Every time when students evaluate my teaching, they said, the professor doesn't really know much, but he sure has a good sense of humor. So I got good score. So I want to thank you for all these years, your influence on me. And yes, that's a sense of humor, I think. For example, I want to cite two things you told me. One is when I went to give my first seminar in graduate school. I called him, I said, "Dago, I'm very nervous. Can you help me?" He said, "Sure. You just remember, when you pull out that jar of mayonnaise from the refrigerator, what do you see on the label?" I said, "It says, keep cool but do not freeze." I said, "Yeah, that's what you should do." And I did it. And I done a fantastic job. Also, when he was trying to set up the Chinese school, and we always talk to people joining us to learn Chinese, he had a story telling people. You know, once that there was a little mouse quickly run back to his wall hole in the wall and tell the mama mouse, "Mama, mommy, there is a big cat chasing me." The big cat, the mama mouse, then said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," and that cat ran away. So, you see, told everyone. That illustrates how important it is to be bilingual. So with that sense of humor, he made so many friends. He touched the life of so many people, and I'm just one of them. I want to thank him. 谢谢大哥. Back, in I think it was 1959 and 1960, when I graduated from the National Taiwan University, we all love a song. I want to sing that song. Okay, before I do that. Another thing I asked my 大哥 is, what are these things called 坐期? Proceed on 7. I don't know if you heard about that. 大哥，你告诉我, you told me 坐期 is a very traditional Chinese custom following someone's death. You divide the time after death into 7 days each section. So you go through 7 days. And each 7 has certain meaning, what the son should do, what the daughter should do, what they should wear, what kind of food should eat. I forgot all, you told me how it goes, but in any case, the reason I thought of that is, you know what? Your children picked a very important date today to remember you. Because today is the 77th day after you were gone. It is the 7th day. After today, we go back to normal. We keep your thought of you in our heart. So back to that song I said I loved. It goes like this. If you know the song, you can sing with me. Goodbye, 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 大哥, goodbye, Goodbye, doctor, goodbye. I see you again, but I don't know when. Goodbye, 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 doctor.
I'm not gonna sing for you, I'm sorry. But I did want to talk about, well, let me just read what I've written. Hello, I'm going with my daughter Natalie. And you might be thinking, wait a second, I did Gongong's homework. I read the family tree 10 times over and I memorized every A, B, B, A, C, D, A, B, C, D plus. I never saw Natalie on the TV side. Well, that's because he typoed my name. He spelled it E-T-H-A-N, and that was very weird. I think it's the Chinese spelling. But in all seriousness, it was a very bitter feeling knowing that Gongong never got to know the real me. And I'm sorry, I cry a lot. Knowing that I've hidden from him for so long, despite him being the most excited to know everyone and to know everything about everyone. And it was almost a cruel irony that when I decided to accept who I really was and was ready to tell the world, he was gone. Sorry. For the longest time, I struggled to feel and process his passing. Despite knowing that I was devastated, I couldn't bring this feeling of sorrow and loss to the surface, and I didn't understand why. So I did what I always do when I'm sad and lost. I turned to my family. I visited my parents and my brother. I gathered with my cousins. And I called him back because he's in Japan and he can't come see me. And slowly it dawned on me that this is why I didn't feel like Tung-Po was gone. He had given me a family that I could always rely on when I was lost. Sorry, a second. I'm just running on my makeup. It's fine. Gung-Won was more than just my grandfather. He was the force behind an entire community of people, all loving and supporting each other. Gung-Won was family reunions, and emailing your extended family about every update of your life, and forwarding you weird chain emails about rare Chinese twins who learned how to juggle spinning blades. He was sharing too much with your family, and caring about everything they had to say because you loved them. So no matter who you truly are, or what your name is, Gung-Won loved you. And every person here is touched by his kindness. So we'll all carry a small part of him with us, and we'll never be without him. Thank you, Gung-Won.
First, I will be speaking for my papa, which is Pat, my Bravo's oldest daughter. So this is her. He would come home and gather us children around the dining table after dinner to do our homework. He was constantly teaching. He taught with math users, he taught while shopping. We were tasked double-checking receipts by rounding prices and adding. And he taught while cooking, since we were asked how to geometrically fit 14 dinners in a small oven. But his true lessons, though, were taught by example. He venerated righteousness and strived to be balanced, reasonable, and patient, and he was. His graciousness impressed me greatly. But it was during his last season of his life when he suffered profound losses. The loss of his sight, the loss of his wife to dementia, that he left the greatest impression. He never failed to tend to his wife, even in the middle of the night when she, in her delirium, called out to him. He never complained about the dimming of his vision and always figured clever, inventive, and ingenious workarounds. In the last years of his life, when his body was frail, but his mind was still sharp, he taught the most powerful lessons: how to graciously accept what life brings and to use one's intellect to refrain. Yes, he taught by example, but how to weather life's losses. But somehow I was not prepared for the loss of him. I am devastated, but I cannot let his life and example be forgotten. I hope to follow his lead and graciously accept, patiently persevere, and refrain. And be grateful to God for granting us the time with his splendid spirit as our teacher, our great-grandfather, our grandfather, and our father, my Baba. And for me, I didn't grow up with the traditional two parents. I had a giant village of aunts and uncles and cousins to raise me, as well as grandparents. And I just would love to thank my Lao for making that possible and creating a home. He opened up to all of us, and I was extremely fortunate to have lived with my Lao and has spent as much time as I did with him. I feel like he was an unstoppable force no matter the challenges he faced. He always made sure I was timely and was picked up from school. Even though with the loss of his sight, he memorized the walking route to my elementary school to come get me. And all that I know is that my Lao was a protector and a beam of light in my life. And I know that he's waiting for all of us at our beloved Ronaldo home with a big batch of Honto that he would always make for me whenever I came back home. I love you, Lao, and we are all grateful to you, and I will see you again soon. Thank you.
The whole Lin family know that I always argue with TP. So one day I got a telephone call from Jeannie. Said, here's the last chance. You want to argue with him? I said, sure. So I'm not going to say any good things. Oh, my name is Chow. TP and I used to share the same office. One day, one of his students in his the class he loved the most That's called math for a school teacher. The student came in and wanted to argue about a point that TB deducted. So it was a multiple choice question. And TB asked the student to tile the floor, those floors. And TB gave a triangle, tile, a square, and a pentagon, and a hexagon. The student chose pentagon. So instead of telling the student that with all this group theory and crystallography and all these things, and so he said, he didn't say anything. He took 6 pieces of paper. He drew a perfect pentagon. He cut them out and put one on the desk and give the other 5 to the students. Said, okay, tile it right around here. So the student did. And TB said, you see the cracks? Oh, yes. So she looked around, she saw a scotch tape on the desk, so she put them together and the scotch tape all the cracks. So TB just watched that and then she said, now what you got? You got a buckle. So the student said, oh, every floor has that. And then, so but then, TB didn't say anything. She just looked at the student, so the student realized that. But before the student went out, the student said, what does this have to do with mathematics? Well, I don't know whether you know this part of TB or not. TB is a genius. He was trained as a chemist, but his hobby was, oh, I should take this off. His hobby was mathematics. So he learned mathematics all by himself. So he had the nerve to come out to season and to, not to the chemistry department, but to math department, said, I want a job. I don't know what kind of math department we got in there. It's okay. So he said, what can you teach? He said, well, I've already read at your curriculum. What you missed is a applied math. I'm going to teach that mathematics. Well, the question that TB asked is actually a very, very important topic in chemistry. It's called crystal study. And to study a crystal, this structure. To study a structure, you must use mathematics. And the mathematics is called group theory. And so this question is very closely knitted with what TB knew. Well, then after the student was gone, TB looked at the buckle on the table, and he said to me, well, if I let the student keep on doing that, what will I get? Would I get a buckled ball or some kind of thing? And then he shook his head and said, no. Unless I put in some hexagon in there, and I think I'll be able to do it. And then, many, many years later, 5 or 6 years later, I met my friend, a chemistry friend, and I said, what are you doing? He said, come to my lab. So I walked into the lab, he told me what he was doing. I almost flipped over. I immediately rang to TP. I said, TP, do you remember the girl who tried to tile the floor with a pentagon tile? He said, what about it? He said, Hardcastle is doing the same thing in his chemistry lab. He is trying to recreate a buckyball. And he said, what is buckyball? Well, buckyball is a crystal with carbon 60, and then arranged in a shape, in a complete closed surface, and with structure of pentagon and hexagon. I said, if you had written up a paper on that so many years ago and get it published, you would have gotten the Nobel Prize, other than the Smalley and Curl who got it on this buckyball. So, TP said, if I spend my time in writing papers and trying to get recognition, I wouldn't have time for free thinking. So later on, TV lost his sight. But whenever I saw TV, he's very happy. He was very happy. It didn't seem to bother him with the sight, without losing the sight. So now I figured it out, that without the sight, he could do all the free thinking he wanted. So I wish that he could write some of them out to share with us. But then he will lose his right of free thinking. So TV, now you have all the time to do free thinking. Bless you.
回想我们认识林教授已经超过40多年的时光了。当时我们的教会是在美国教会的一个体育馆里面聚会，每个星期天我们就看到一对中年的夫妇来到我们中间，面带笑容，高贵的气质令我们非常的敬仰和钦佩。这一对可爱的夫妇就是林同波教授和夫人，我们都非常敬佩他，我们也非常欣赏他们。林教授是非常尊重并且孝敬他的长辈的，他的母亲林伯母和他的岳母盛婆婆都跟他们一起住在 Northridge 房子里面。当他们年长不能来教会的时候，林教授特别邀请杨公川牧师和我们许多人到他们府上，为他们讲解圣经，跟他们一同欣赏神话语的美妙。我们非常感谢林教授夫妇，他们常常开放他们的家庭来增进大家的友谊。有的时候我们在他家里面会看到他从新加坡回来的妹妹，有的时候我们在他家里面为林婆婆或者是为盛婆婆庆祝90大寿，这样欢乐的时光永远留在我们的记忆中。林教授有美满的家庭，有美丽温存慈爱的妻子，他有这么多孝顺的子女，孙辈们个个都非常的杰出，出类拔萃，是大家所欣赏的一个美满的家庭。在他年老的时候，正当我们思想他的生活这么美满，上帝却带给我们一个非常大的惊喜，这就是他愿意在本年2月14号接受耶稣基督做他的救主。当小韵姐接到一通电话从林教授那里来的时候，她说她愿意接受耶稣基督的救赎，耶稣基督做她的救主。这个时候，通天的大路就为她打开了，因为正如圣经上所说的，耶稣说：“我就是道路、真理、生命，没有一个人不借着我能够到神的面前。”这个美丽的道路为她打开了，我们欢天喜地为她庆祝。小韵姐立刻通知于牧师和师母，次日就去拜访他们。在欢乐的时光中间，林教授说出他的信主的道理。他说，66年来 ，Emily 陪伴着我，她是美好的信徒的见证，她的美好，她的爱心，她的忍耐， 他的思想使我想到他所选择的信仰是正确的，我也愿意跟他一样信仰他的主，他是诚心诚意的接受这位耶稣基督做他的救主。在这种欢乐的时光中，Emily 她整个时间是精神非常的充沛，非常的注目看着林教授，每一句话都记在心里。这是一种爱的表现，这是一种爱的追随，这是一种爱的回馈。Emily 终身的服侍、爱心和她的所有的表现，她的回馈是让林教授得到这个永生的福气。我们都知道，信耶稣基督是我们最美好的福气。我也愿意在座的每位都能够得到这位耶稣基督做我们的救主，得到这美好的福气。谢谢大家。
I'm not in the program. My name is Winston now, and I like to share something how I know TP. You know that you mentioned that TP was the founder of a Chinese Cultural Association. But you don't know how much more he has contributed to the Chinese Cultural Association and Chinese school. How many people here, either themselves or their kid, went to Chinese school? Can you raise your hand? Okay. How many took the credit class? How many kids got credit for taking Chinese school? When you go to Chinese school, you got 40 high school credit, which is accepted by the University of California. And you know that TP was the one that wrote the first credit class test for the Chinese school. Also, TP is the one that we always look up to. When we have a problem, who do we go to? We don't go to poor Chow or Adara. We go to PT. We go to, he is the one that, when there's a problem, he calms everybody down. And everybody has to take his wisdom. So that's one thing that is contributes so much to the Chinese school that nobody really, is tributing them. That's why I want to force myself to tell you and share this little tidbit. And I hope that TP going to be with us all the time. We're going to, when we have a problem, we say, TP to us, calm down. Thank you very much.
Well, on behalf of Emily and the Tung-Po family, I want to thank you all for attending today's celebration of life. Your presence here means so much to the family, and it shows how much Tung-Po was loved and revered by so many. Big thank you to Reverend Lowe and you, and Grace Chang, and the rest of the Chinese Community Christian Alliance Church for hosting and helping with this wonderful ceremony. And thank you to all the speakers who gave such lovely and heartfelt testimonials about Dr. Lin's life, and more importantly, his impact and influence on all the people around him. And thank you, Adara, for the lovely singing. Now, while Dr. Lin made significant contributions as an academic professional and as a leader in his community, his most meaningful and lasting contribution is his impact on the people, like his family, his friends, and his students. As Pericles, famous Greek leader, once said, "What we leave behind isn't engraved in stone monuments. It's woven into the lives of the people around us." And Dr. Lin Tung-Po touched the lives of so many people through his teachings, his friendship, and his love. And this is what he will leave behind as his lasting legacy. So thank you all again for being here. Please join us for the reception after the closure of this service.